Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. We are busy with the kitab known as Riyaadhus Saaliheen of Imam Nawawi rahimahullah. We are currently in the chapter with regards to Tawbah, and tonight inshallah we are doing the 21st hadith of this kitab, which is a very lengthy hadith. It's a famous hadith but extremely lengthy. So we will see how far we can get. Maybe we can do the whole hadith. If not, then it will stretch over into next week, inshallah. So without further delay, let us begin. So it starts with hadith number 21. وعن عبد الله بن كعب بن مالك وكان قائد كعب رضي الله عنه من بنيه حين عمي. Abdullah ibn Ka'ab ibn Maalik. He was the son of the famous Sahabi Hadhrat Ka'ab ibn Maalik radiyallahu anhu. Hadhrat Ka'ab radiyallahu anhu became blind in his old age. And this son, Abdullah ibn Ka'ab, he used to be the guide and take him to the masjid and stuff like this at this age after he had lost his sight. So this son said, قال سمعت كعب بن مالك رضي الله عنه يحدث بحديثه حين تخلف عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في غزوة تبوك. He said, I heard Ka'b ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu, meaning his father, narrating his يحدث بحديثه, narrating his story حين تخلف, when he was left behind from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the battle of Tabuk. Now, the battle of Tabuk took place in the 9th year after Hijrah. This was like the end of the Mushrikeen of Makkah were all destroyed and crushed at this time and everything of the sort. The Battle of Tabuk, how it came about was that news came that the Christians, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam had already dealt now with the Jews, the Mushrikeen were dealt with, and now the new enemy on the horizon were the Christians. So the news reached Medina that the Christians were amassing an army and they were going to be attacking the Muslims. So before they could amass their army, like with previous battles, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took the initiative and gathered an army and set out to face them. Rather than wait for them to attack the Muslims in Medina, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took everybody in this the dire straits that they were in the excess of heat and stuff, and marched out to face the Christians over there at Tabuk. But they were, at the end of the day, the Christians didn't turn up, so there was no battle, but it's still known as Ghazwatu Tabuk. Any case, so this was the Battle of Tabuk. If you want to hear a little bit more about it, I think on my the Darul Ilm YouTube channel, I think I've got the Ghazawat series uploaded, hopefully. If so, then in there is the Battle of Tabuk comes as one of those battles. But I think I've put up, or probably not the entire series, but anyhow, you can get it on WhatsApp then if not. Anyway, so قال كعب, and now Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu begins to tell his story. He says, لم أتخلف عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في غزوة قط إلا في غزوة تبوك غير أني قد تخلفت من غزوة بدر ولم يعاتب أحد تخلف عنه. He says that I have never stayed behind or been left behind by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in any battle ever. In other words, he took part in every single battle of Islam. إلا في غزوة تبوك, except now for the battle of Tabuk. He says, besides excluding the fact that I had been amongst those that had stayed behind for the Battle of Badr, but this was وَلَمْ يُعَاتَبْ أَحَدٌ تَخَلَّفَ عَنْهُ. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam didn't find fault with anybody who had stayed back from Badr. Why? إِنَّمَا خَرَجَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَالْمُسْلِمُونَ يُرِيدُونَ عَيْرَ قُرَيْشٍ. That Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Sahaba radiyallahu anhu set out only intending a caravan, they never intended to have a battle. They intended to just raid a caravan and that's it, like how the previous caravans were raided. حتى جمع الله تعالى بينهم وبين عدوهم على ميعاد. But it so happened that Allah had gathered the Muslims and the Mushrikeen on that set place for the Battle of Badr, which nobody was expecting there to be a battle. ولقد شهدت مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليلة العقبة حين تواثقنا على الإسلام. He said, I had taken part with on the night of Aqaba. I was there with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam when we had given the bay'ah, that tawathaqna ala al-Islam, meaning we took the bay'ah by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that famous bay'ah which is known as bay'atul Aqaba. He says, وَمَا أُحِبُّ أَنَّ لِي بِهَا مَشْهَدَ بَدْرٍ. I would not have wanted to exchange my being present at the Bay'ah of Aqaba. I would not exchange that in order to be a Badri companion. This is how high the Bay'atul Aqaba was amongst the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and how high it is in reality. That Hadhrat Ka'b radiallahu anhu said, I would not have exchanged this in order to be a Badri companion. He says, وَإِن كَانَتْ بَدْرٌ أَذْكَرَ فِي النَّاسِ مِنْهَا. The only thing is that Badr is more well known amongst the people and more mentioned more often than the Bay'ah of Aqaba. But even though he's saying that it's so important that I would not have exchanged it in order to be there at Badr. وكان من خبري حين تخلفت عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في غزوة تبوك. He says, now my story, what happened to me, is now speaking this at an old age, that my story was that when I had been left behind by being left behind from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in the battle of Tabuk, is that أني لم أكن قط أقوى ولا أيسر مني, that there was never a time when I was stronger or had it any easier. حين تخلفت عنه في تلك الغزوة, then at this time of the battle of Tabuk when I was left behind. والله ما جمعت قبلها راحلتين قط. He said that by Allah I had never in my life owned two mounts at the same time. But it was like I was now such a rich person at this time that I had two animals to ride on. That's how rich I was. حتى جمعتهما في تلك الغزوة. I never had two mounts that I could have taken them both with for one غزوة like it was at this occasion. ولم يكن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يريد غزوة إلا ورى بغيرها. He says that it was the habit of Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم. Whenever Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم intended a battle, ورى بغيرها. Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم would imply and make such allusions that the person would think Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was heading, let's say for example, east, but then in reality Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam headed west. Why? This comes from that hadith, al-harbu khuda'a, that warfare is deception, because of the fact that there were munafiqeen amongst the Muslims over there. So in order to not tip the kuffar off of the Muslims coming, therefore Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would make it seem we're heading east. So the munafiqeen run off and they say they're heading to the east. And then in reality, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam heads west. So that's what was the reason why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to do this. He says, حتى كانت تلك الغزوة, until it came time for this غزوة, the Battle of Tabuk. فغزاها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في حر شديد. That Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam went out in severe heat. Heat that for the Muslims, the Arabs who lived in Arabia, who are used to heat and the heat of the desert, and even they considered this to be an extremely hot time. واستقبل سفرا بعيدا ومفازا, and it was going to be a long and difficult journey. ومفازا, we just did mafaza yesterday in the tafsir. Mafaza here meaning a barren open land. So we're going to be passing through a land which is barren, there's no water, it's hot, it's dry and stuff like this. Yeah, it's a difficult journey. واستقبل عددا كثيرا, but Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam got a large army to come with. فجلى للمسلمين أمرهم ليتأهبوا أهبة غزوهم. So the Muslims, they hastened to making preparations to go out for the jihad. فأخبرهم الذي يريده. So because of this, because of this journey, which is going to be difficult, which is going to be long, which is going to be in the desert and the dryness and everything, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam informed the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum as to where they were going to be going. Oh, okay. والمسلمون مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كثير ولا يجمعهم كتاب حافظ يريد بذلك الديوان. He says that the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam informed them, and as a result, the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, with all this difficulty they were facing, they came in their multitudes. The Muslims with the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam were so many. وَلَا يَجْمَعُهُمْ كِتَابٌ حَافِظٌ يُرِيدُ بِذَلِكَ الدِّيوَانِ. He said that there were so many Sahaba and there was no person amongst them to actually jot down the amount of people that was present for that battle. In other words, it was just about everybody was there. There nobody is there to count. Okay, take a roll call. It's just like everybody turned up. قال كعب: فقل رجل يريد أن يتغيب إلا ظن أن ذلك سيخفى به ما لم ينزل فيه وحي من الله. He says that Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, he says that there was hardly a person that who intended to hide away, but that he would feel that nobody would notice him missing amongst the crowd. So many people there were, as long as Allah didn't reveal something regarding him. Obviously, if Allah revealed that so and so is not here, it's a different story. But because of the huge multitude of Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, they felt they were, or not the Sahaba, but if a person had wanted to hide away, nobody would even have missed him. So he says, وغزا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم تلك الغزوة حين طابت الثمار والظلال فأنا إليها أسعر. He says that Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم went forward for this ghazwa حين طابت الثمار والظلال, that when the fruit were now ripe on the tree and the shade was so welcoming, فأنا إليها أسعر, that I was inclined towards it. I also wanted, it was a time, it was excessively hot, I wanted to also rest a little bit in the shade and enjoy of the fruits. We were having a difficult time, it was hot, we didn't have a good harvest before this, so here came the time when the fruit was ready on the trees. Now the time that if you ever you were going to enjoy it, now is that time. He says, فَتَجَهَّزَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَالْمُسْلِمُونَ مَعَهُ. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the prepared for the battle, and the Muslims started preparing as well. وَطَفِقْتُ أَغْدُو لِكَيْ أَتَجَهَّزَ مَعَهُ. And I also started going out, so that I can start making preparations as well with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But فَأَرْجِعُ وَلَمْ أَقْضِ شَيْئًا. But I would return back at the end of the day without having done anything. So it's like everybody's out there, gathering their things. If you're making your arrows and cutting your heads and stuff like this, you're putting your things together, sharpening your swords and stuff. So I was out there also with everybody, but at the end of the day, I came back and I hadn't done anything. وأقول في نفسي, and I say to myself, أنا قادر على ذلك إذا أردت. You know what? I can do it if I wanted to. It's not a big deal. I can get myself ready in no time. فلم يزل يتمادى بي, and this continued to be my case حتى استمر بالناس الجد, until now the people were in their earnest, they were just about ready. فأصبح رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم غاديا والمسلمون معه. So Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم was heading out in the morning and the Muslims with him. ولم أقض من جهازي شيئا, and I had yet not prepared anything of my preparations. ثم غدوت فرجعت ولم أقض شيئا. I went out again and I returned without having done anything. فلم يزل يتمادى بي حتى أسرع, and this continued to be my case. Like this, the procrastination. حتى أسرعوا وتفارط الغزو, that the army of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hastened on. They traveled far, and they ate up the land so far and quick they moved on. فهممت أن أرتحل فأدركهم. So I thought, you know what, I can still go and still catch up to them, because Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, he had a fast horse. It was like, even if they left, it wasn't that he intended to not go out in the jihad. It was like the procrastination was there. So they are on camel. If I get on my horse, I'll catch up with them in no time. So he says that فَيَا لَيْتَنِي فَعَلْتُ. He says, oh, woe, if only I had done so. ثُمَّ لَمْ يُقَدَّرْ ذَلِكَ لِي. But that was not decreed for me that I should be able to go out and catch them. فطفقت إذا خرجت في الناس بعد خروج رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يحزنني أني لا أرى لي أسوة إلا رجلا مغموصا عليه في النفاق. That he said that when I went out now into the city of Medina, after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had gone out, it saddened me that I could not see a role model. In other words, there were a couple of people around, but there was nobody of decency. There were no Hadhrat Abu Bakr, no Hadhrat Umar, no Hadhrat Uthman, no Hadhrat Ali radiyallahu anhum, or any of them. There was nobody like this here. There was no person I could look up to amongst them. He says, who were the people around there? Rajulan maghmusan alayhi fi nifaq. Those people that were drenched in nifaq. They were asli munafiq, kafir types. Oh, he says, oh, rajulan mimman عذر الله تعالى من الضعفاء. Apart from them, the only other people were those weak people that Allah had excused on account of their weakness. They blind. So, he can't help even if he was there. So Allah had excused him. People like that. They were the only people left behind in Medina. No men remained behind in Medina from the Battle of Tabuk. So he says, Walam, okay, he don't mention yet, but there were 3 Sahaba radiallahu anhu who remained behind in Medina. It was Hadhrat Ka'ab ibn Maalik radiallahu anhu, it was Hadhrat Hilal ibn Umayyah, and it was Hadhrat Murara ibn Rabi' radiallahu anhu. These were the 3 Sahaba that had remained behind. And they are mentioned in the Quran, وَعَلَى الثَّلَاثَةِ الَّذِينَ خُلِّفُوا, and those 3 that had been left behind. That ayah, it refers to these 3 Sahaba radiallahu anhum. They were the only able-bodied Sahaba that had not taken part in the Battle of Tabuk. The others were pure munafiqeen, and they were Sahaba who had remained behind on account of the fact that either they were like crippled or they were blind or something which had prevented them from a Shari'i perspective from Allah that they could they are excused from taking part in the battle. Now, Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, he goes on, he says, وَلَمْ يَذْكُرْنِي رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ حَتَّى بَلَغَ تَبُوكَ. He says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam didn't speak about me or mention me at all until when the Muslims reached at Tabuk. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was now at Tabuk. And, we're talking about, there are so many Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. And, it's like there were so many, anybody could have been lost in the crowd. Yet, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as he mentions here, he says, فَقَالَ وَهُوَ جَالِسٌ فِي الْقَوْمِ بِتَبُوكَ مَا فَعَلَ كَعْبُ بْنُ مَالِكٍ. He says that when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was now sitting at Tabuk, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam asked, what happened to Ka'b ibn Malik? We're talking about this multitudes of Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, and yet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam picks up on the, like you could say, one Sahabi who's not there. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam asked, where is he? He's somebody that's always here. Why don't I see him? فقال رجل من بني سلمة, a Sahabi from the tribe of Banu Salama, he said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, حبسه برده والنظر في عطفيه. This Sahabi, he censured Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, and he said that, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what has held him back is his burda. It's his cloak. وَالنَّظَرُ فِي عِطْفَيْهِ, looking at his sides. In other words, he's so busy, to put it in our terms, he's so busy admiring himself and the wealth that he has, and that's what has held him back. فقال له معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه بئس ما قلت. Hadhrat Mu'adh ibn Jabal رضي الله عنه, he spoke up against this Sahabi, and he said, بئس ما قلت, what an evil thing you have said. والله يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما علمنا عليه إلا خيرا. So he said, يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, we only know good of Hadhrat Ka'b ibn Malik رضي الله عنه. I mean, after all, this was a Sahabi who took part from the Battle of Uhud right through every single ghazwa. We now almost at the passing away of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and there was not one ghazwa that he was missing from. So we're talking about a man of this caliber. So anyway, Hadhrat Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiyallahu anhu, he comes to his defense. But he says that فَسَكَتَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam kept silent. In other words, the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam didn't condemn this Sahabi from Banu Salama for making that statement, nor did Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam agree with Hadhrat Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu in his defense of Hadhrat Ka'b. In other words, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam stayed neutral and didn't say anything, waiting for revelation from Allah before saying anything. Anyway, so فبين هو على ذلك رأى رجلا مبيضا يزول به السراب. While this incident was transpiring, and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam now sitting in this saddened state, these two Sahaba, Hadhrat Mu'adh and this Sahabi from Banu Salama, they standing here like this, having this difference, and in the distance on the horizon, the silhouette of, or at least a whitened silhouette of a person appears. Yazulu bihi sarab. Like the like a mirage there in the distance. This silhouette begins to appear, and the people can start seeing that it's the shape of a man that's coming on. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كن أبا خيثمة. Let it be Abu. Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم says, let it be Abu Khaythama, the رضي الله عنه. فإذا أبو خيثمة الأنصاري رضي الله عنه وهو الذي تصدق بصاع التمر حين لمزه المنافقون. And who is Hadhrat Abu Khaythama al-Ansari رضي الله عنه? He is famous for that incident that he was that Sahabi who had given one sa', as you would say, like one small packet of dates when the Munafiqeen came to condemn him. What had happened at this incident over here? They were, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam called on the people to give sadaqah, anything that they had, there were Sahaba who came and gave huge amounts, and the Munafiqeen, they came and they say, "This man, these people, all they just want to do is show off. Look at this. Why are they bringing so much here? It's just because they want everybody must see. Look how much they do." And that's how they attacked those Sahaba. Then Hadhrat Abu Khaythama radiyallahu anhu, he was extremely poor. And this, you understand also from the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the army had already reached Tabuk. And Hadhrat Abu Khaythama radiyallahu anhu had no horse or transport or something. He was walking from Medina to Tabuk. That is why they could see the silhouette of a person coming in the distance, that he walked in the excessive heat to meet up with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and take part in the jihad. So this Sahabi, Hadhrat Abu Khaytham radiyallahu anhu, being as poor as he was, on that occasion, he brought this one sa' of dates. He worked difficult and this is what he earned, and he came with this one sa'. When we talk today, it would be the equivalent of let's say basically like about 1 kg or so, a small amount. In those days, it was a little. In today's time, obviously, the price of dates is a lot, but think of it in the context of you are coming there with 1 kg of flour. In today's context, you don't buy anything smaller than a 2.5 kg flour. That's like bare minimum, a standard pack size. So when you talk about 1 kg, that's like excessively small. So coming with 1 kg, one sa' at least of dates, the Munafiqeen now started to mock this Hadhrat Abu Khaytham radiyallahu anhu. And they're like, Allah doesn't need the pittance that you're coming with. That's how they condemned Hadhrat Abu Khaytham radiyallahu anhu on the other hand. So they condemned the Sahaba who brought a lot, and they condemned Hadhrat Abu Khaytham radiyallahu anhu who came with a little bit that he could afford. Or at least I shouldn't say that he could afford. He brought whatever he had, which was only just this few dates. That's all. So he says, كعب رضي الله عنه, he continues, قال كعب فلما بلغني أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قد توجه قافلا من تبوك حضرني بثي. He says that Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, when the news now reached me that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam had turned back from Tabuk. In other words, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam went to Tabuk, set up camp there. The Christians didn't show up. 20 days Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam sat at Tabuk waiting for when the Christians were going to show up. But after it became clear that there was not a Christian inside, there was not going to be any battle, they ran away before facing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was now a waste of time to wait there any longer. So after 20 days had passed in this manner, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the Sahaba, pack up, we're heading back to Medina. So this news reached Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu in Medina. He says, when this news reached me, hadarani bathi, now my mind went into in other words, my mind went into overdrive. فَطَفِقْتُ أَتَذَكَّرُ الْكَذِبَ. I started thinking, what lie can I invent? What excuse can I come up with? وَأَقُولُ بِمَا أَخْرُجُ مِنْ سَخَطِهِ غَدًا وَأَسْتَعِينُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ بِكُلِّ ذِي رَأْيٍ مِنْ أَهْلِ. He said that, how will I escape the anger of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam tomorrow when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam returns? And I sought the help of every intelligent person amongst my family. فلما قيل إن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قد أطل قادما زاح عني الباطل حتى عرفت أني لم أنج منه بشيء أبدا فأجمعت صدقه. So he said that when it was said, now, I asked everybody and they gave the different opinions, what you should do, say this, make that excuse and stuff like this here. He says, but when it was said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam has just arrived, زاح عني الباطل. That, all of these excuses, all the lies and everything like this here, it, the everything that these excuses and things, it all just disappeared from me. And I came, حتى عرفت, and I came to realize that nothing is going to ever save me uh, from this. فأجمعت صدقه. So I decided I will tell the truth to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. وأصبح رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قادما. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam came now into the city of Medina. وكان إذا قدم من السفر بدأ بالمسجد فركع في ركعتين ثم جلس للناس. He says it was the habit of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would return from a journey to first go to the masjid. Before heading home, first head to the masjid and فركع فيه ركعتين and perform 2 rak'at of salah, and then ثم جلس للناس, and then sit and deal with the affairs that people need seeing to. فلما فعل ذلك, when after Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had done this, جاءه المخلفون يعتذرون إليه ويحلفون له, that all the مخلفون, all those munafiqeen, those في الدرك الأسفل من النار, those good for nothings, they came and they made excuses, taking promises and oaths. I wasn't going to be there. Like I was so deadly sick. I had COVID-19. I was locked up in quarantine, and they made up all the excuses. وكانوا بضع وثمانين رجلا. They were 80 something people, these munafiqeen. فقبل منهم علانيتهم وبايعهم واستغفر لهم ووكل سرائرهم إلى الله تعالى حتى جئت. That Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam basically dismissed them in the sense that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam accepted their excuses and things on the apparent, took the bay'ah from them, made istighfar for them, and left their secret affairs. In other words, whether what they were saying is the truth or not, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam left it to Allah, that Allah will reveal revelation with regards to them, whether they are telling the truth or not. I'm not going to delve into it, just dismiss them all. So he says, حتى جئت, until I came along. فلما سلمت تبسم تبسم المغضب. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam saw me and I made salam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam smiled, but the smile of a person that's angry. ثم قال تعالى, and then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, تعال, come. فجئت أمشي حتى جلست بين يديه. I came and I sat in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. فقال لي ما خلفك. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam told me, ask me, what kept you back? ألم تكن قد ابتعت ظهرك? Did you not buy a mount? قال قلت يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إني والله لو جلست عند غيرك من أهل الدنيا لرأيت أني سأخرج من سخطه بعذر. So Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, he said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, by Allah, I take an oath that if I was sitting by anyone else in the world besides you, I would have been able to make some excuse and get out from him being angry. Because Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, he had a way with words. He was, as people say, the gift of the gab. But Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, he could, if he told you something, you would believe it. So Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, he said that if I had been with anybody else and I were to make up an excuse, there would be nobody that wouldn't feel sorry and accept my excuse and stuff like this here. But because he says, لَقَدْ أُعْطِيتُ جَدَلًا, I have been given jadal. Jadal means arguments, but here it means that I have been given this ability to convince people with my words. Allah gave me the golden tongue. I can speak my way out of things. But ولكني والله لقد علمت لئن حدثتك اليوم حديث كذب ترضى به عني ليوشكن الله يسخطك علي. He said that I knew, wallahi, that if I were to speak a lie to you today, tell you a lie story, you would be pleased with me. But la yushikanna Allahu yuskhituka alayya. But soon Allah would make you become angry with me. So you may believe the lie I tell you, and then Allah exposes me, and then you would be upset with me. وإن حدثتك حديث صدق تجد علي فيه إني لأرجو فيه عقب الله عز وجل. He says, but if I were to tell you the truth, the reality of what had happened, you will be upset with me regarding it. But I have hope in the end result that Allah will make a way out for me. والله ما كان لي من عذر. And now Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu, he begins and he say, Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, I had no excuse. والله ما كنت قط أقوى ولا أيسر مني حين تخلفت عنك. That wallahi I was never stronger, nor did I have things ever easier than when I had been left behind from you on this occasion. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أما هذا فقد صدق فقم حتى يقضي الله فيك. So Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم, after I said this, Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, this person, he has spoken the truth, so stand up, in other words, go until Allah judges with regards to you. وثار رجال من بني سلمة فاتبعوني فقالوا لي والله ما علمناك أذنبت ذنبا قبل هذا لقد عجزت في ألا تكون اعتذرت إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بما اعتذر إليه المخلفون فقد كان كافيك ذنبك استغفار رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لك. So some people of the tribe of Banu Salima or Salama, they followed me after I left now from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they told me that wallahi, we don't know you having committed a sin in your life before this. That, you know, it's like, did you not have the ability to that you could make an excuse up to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like how those mukhallafun, those munafiqeen who stayed behind, they made up their excuses. Could you not also come up with an excuse? It would have been sufficient for the wiping out of your sin if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sought Allah's forgiveness for you. I mean, that would have been sufficient. قال فوالله ما زالوا يؤنبونني حتى أردت أن أرجع إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فأكذب نفسي. He said that they kept on pestering me like this to such an extent that I thought to myself, I should go back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and belie myself and say, no, I lied earlier. I actually did have an excuse. But he says, ثم قلت لهم هل لقي هذا معي من أحد هل لقي هذا معي من أحد. I asked them that, was there anyone else who had the same who gave the same thing like me, in other words, who spoke the truth and said they had no excuse. قالوا نعم لقيه معك رجلان قال مثل ما قلت وقيل لهما مثل ما قيل لك. So they said, yes, there were two people as well. They said the same thing like you, that they had no excuse, and it was said to them the same thing that was said to you. In other words, they have spoken the truth. Go and wait until Allah judges and reveals something regarding you. قال قلت من هما. I asked, who are they? قالوا مرارة بن الربيع العمري وهلال بن أمية الواقفي. I asked, who are they? And they said it is Hadhrat Murara ibn Rabi' al-Amri and Hadhrat Hilal ibn Umayyah al-Waqifi radiyallahu anhuma. قال فذكروا لي رجلين صالحين قد شهدا بدرا فيهما أسوة. He said that they mentioned these two Sahaba, Hadhrat Murara ibn Rabi' and Hadhrat Hilal ibn Umayyah. They are two pious men. This is Hadhrat Ka'ab saying now. The men they mentioned to me were two men of piety. They had witnessed and taken part in Badr. فيهم أسوة فيهما أسوة. In them is a role model to follow. In other words, قال فمضيت حين ذكروهما لي. When they mentioned who these two people are that had said the same, it made up my mind. I'm going to stick on what I had done, because the people who came and made excuses were munafiqeen, and the people who came and told the truth were great, noble, honorable, pious people, Badri companions. So ونهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن كلامنا أيها الثلاثة من بين من تخلف عنه. Okay, our time is just about running out, and this is where now the second portion of the story begins. So as you can see, we've still got a bit of a lengthy way to go. We may even go for 3 days before we actually end up finishing this 3 weeks at least. This week and another 2 more weeks. But anyway, we will see how far we go next week, inshallah ta'ala. We'll be stopping on this point here. I think we are on page. Yes, we are on this page here. From here. ونهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن كلامنا أيها الثلاثة من بين من تخلف عنه. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam had instituted a boycott against us, prohibited people from speaking to us, we the three that had been left behind and had not taken part in the battle of Tabuk. Okay, question over here. Was this conquest Fard Ain? When the Fard Ain, in the sense that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, if you were to speak Fard Ain is terminologies that we use after the passing of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Fard Ain did not apply in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Fard Ain is, like I say, you have Fard Kifaya, Fard Ain. Fard Kifaya was Battle of Badr, that of that sort, where people weren't asked. In other words, where it wasn't obligated upon them, but what we understand is that Tabuk and all of these other battles, they were Fard Ain. If you want to use those terms, then yes, the Battle of Tabuk was Fard Ain, and so was the Battle of Hunain, and so was Fath Makkah, and so were all of those ones. They were all Fard Ain. It don't mean in the context of fiqh as we understand it, like this year, that the women had to go out. That's why I say we don't use these terms, because it don't apply in this context. Otherwise, it would have meant that every woman had to go out, the child without the parent and things. Terms have their places where they fit in, and in the understanding that everybody had to go out, yes, all the men had to go out for the Battle of Tabuk. It was Fard Ain in that sense, but not Fard Ain as we understand it from a fiqhi perspective, that the debtor goes without the permission of the creditor, and not in that context where the women are going out and taking part physically fighting. It wasn't that type, or if you're meaning Fard Ain from that aspect. But yes, it was Fard Ain upon all of the men to go out for the jihad, and Allah knows best. But anyhow, so this is where we are stopping. After, we will begin again from this point where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam instituted the boycott upon Hadhrat Ka'b ibn Maalik radiyallahu anhu, Hadhrat Murara ibn Rabi' and Hadhrat Hilal ibn Umayyah radiyallahu anhum. And like I say, we stop on this point. If nobody has any questions, next week inshallah ta'ala we will continue onwards from this, carrying on from here at least anyway. So yes, it's a very lengthy hadith, it's a very lengthy story. It's a story unlike any other hadith, actually, in reality. I think this is the longest of any hadith that a person can find, because it is a full story being laid out. Reality, not fictional story. Factual reality, like Surah Yusuf is the longest story in the Quran. Likewise, in the hadith perspective, the longest hadith, the longest story is the story of Hadhrat Ka'b ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu. But seeing as we have not gotten any questions and we've only got about a minute and a couple of seconds left, we will end on this point here, inshallah ta'ala. Next week, we continue onwards, like I say, still. And the sad thing is, there is so much to be learned from the incident of Hadhrat Ka'b radiyallahu anhu. But if we were to actually start delving into all the various things like that and stuff, we'd end up taking till the end of 2020 before we end up finishing the hadith of Hadhrat Ka'b ibn Malik. So it's sad, but we going on a little bit of a faster basis through the hadith, touching on some of the important points, but not covering everything as it should be. But that being that, we end on this point here, inshallah ta'ala. Until next time, wa sallallahu wa sallama wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.